I'd invite the council to come back so that we can keep proceeding as efficiently as possible. We need one more member on the dais so we can formally start. All right, I call to order our Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. All members of the council are present with the exception of Council Member Bloom. We are joined by council office staff, the mayor, a number of his staff, and among them is our Director of Economic Development, Mr. Chris Pengra. Tonight, reminder, this portion is a work session, so feel free to comment as you'd like. We'll start with Mr. Pengra discussing the Salt Lake County Convention and Tourism Assessment Area proposal. Mr. Pengra.
Thank you, Chair McConaughey. And if I put the nomenclature down wrong, the CTAA is the Convention and Tourism Assessment Area. And I may have misnamed that in the staff report. If I did, I do apologize. What I'm presenting to you is some details regarding the CTAA and what it may mean for West Jordan City for your consideration. And I am asking for feedback this evening. If this is something that you would like to pursue, then what I would do is I would bring back a resolution for your consideration at a council policy session. And that would have to happen relatively soon. It would have to happen in May. And so I would bring that at your instruction. So in the staff report, you saw this document here, several pages. This is the says at the top, the opportunity to leverage CTAA legislation in the West region. And I'm just going to hit on some high points. We do have some subject matter experts available today. If you do have any technical questions, they may be best to answer those questions. This is an assessment area that is made possible by HB 373, which was passed during the last legislative session. And essentially what it is, it enables the, it organizes the hotels into districts, and the hotels can elect to participate with community support, so with municipal and county support. The hotels can elect to put a fee on their bill, which is set at 2% added to the bill for hotel stays. And then those funds essentially pass through. They're paid by the visitors, and they pass through to the committees and ultimately the board that then distribute those funds, and the funds have to be used for convention and tourism that is going to result in benefit to the hotels. So in the city of West Jordan, we have 3 hotels currently. 2 of the hotels have provided their support for this to move forward. Those are Hampton Inn and Marriott Residence Inn. They've both voiced their support for this via email and also signing a petition. And then the other hotel was My Place, which was non-responsive. And with that, maybe I'll just pause there for a moment. Are there any questions that come to mind?
Mr. Pengra, you mentioned that this is a fee. Is this a fee or is it a tax, is question 1. And then number 2, do they have to have the city sign off if they want to participate? It seems like there are other trade associations that self-levy assessments that can be used for different things to promote the industry. Can they still do that without city sign-off?
My understanding is no, they cannot. The city would have to pass a resolution accepting the CTAA. And your other question, Chair, I'm sorry.
You'd characterize this as a fee. Is it a fee or is it a tax?
It's a 2% fee, is that correct? So there's
Tomato,
no,
tomato,
what's that?
tomato, tomato. I mean,
Yeah, it's a charge on the room. It's not based off of property and it has no impact on property tax, but it is a charge to the
so
end
who,
user.
who
to the
collects
customer.
it? So, I mean, the hotel collects it. Where do they remit it to? Do they
So-
remit it to the city, to the county, to the state? Somewhere
So
else?
my understanding is the county, but perhaps I would have the subject matter experts answer maybe some of the technical questions on the mechanics of that if you would like.
I also want to know what precludes them from being able to just do this as an association, a hotel association. Why can't they? And I want to tell you in the packet, there aren't very many. It just doesn't give me very clear ideas of what this money is really going to be spent on, and that makes me very nervous. And I would need a lot more information to feel good about this, I'm afraid, than what I've seen in the packet. So maybe there's more somewhere, but
So I'd be happy to share my thoughts, and then if you'd like to respond to them, but just so council can hear. Originally, I didn't think too much of it. Seems like, oh, sure, why not? But the more I learned about it, it seems like it's a 5-year assessment at 2%. It's the way the funds are split up. The city has no real participation there. It's members of the hotel industry are elected to determine where the tax goes. So I'm very uneasy assessing a 2% tax where the city doesn't have a say in how that money's distributed. Theoretically, some of it could come back to West Jordan to help with tourism and things like that, but it could also go to somebody else for marketing. There's no guarantee that we see a benefit from that. And my biggest, and this is if I'm understanding it correctly, I want to throw this out there so you can respond to it, but my biggest concern is if we're putting a tax out there that the city doesn't have any representation or accountability for folks with regard to how it's spent. That's my biggest concern with that. I don't want to say, yes, we'll support a 2% tax, even though we have no say in whether that money goes to help out West Jordan, whether it's going to help Salt Lake. There may be indirect benefits, but where we don't have a seat at the table when it comes to how those funds are divided and how those funds are spent, I'm very reticent to participate. So those were my thoughts. If anyone else wanted to chime in, Councilmember Green, and then we'd be happy to hear responses to those thoughts.
So I have kind of a cynical position. How many other industries do we get a charge of tax to that they get to do that the government does their advertising for them? That's what this is. It's a tax touted as a tourism tax that is going to be used to advertise to bring more tourists and promote the business, the hotel business. And yes, tourism brings a lot of money into, but that's why we have the Utah Tourism Council. That's why we have other kinds of entities. And I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable having a tax that literally is just funneled back into advertising for the people who are collecting the tax. I may have a jaded or biased viewpoint on that, and I'm certainly willing to hear other positions, but we don't charge an extra gas tax so we can promote gas stations down the street. We don't charge extra tire tax to promote discount auto and Big O Tire in West Jordan and the new one, whatever his name is, over on 78th by my house. No, Les Schwab. And then there's the other one. There's
Burt Brothers.
yeah. Anyway, that's the puzzling piece to me. Is yeah, and I agree with Councilmember McConaughey. If there's no accountability if we're charging a tax, there has to be some sort of accountability to the taxpayer. And if this board has no accountability to the taxpayers, boy, that's a slippery slope. So, fundamentally, we charge a hotel tax now. I'm okay with hotel tax. It's a way that we've decided to raise revenue. But when we start raising taxes so that we can promote a specific business, I have a fundamental issue with that. I don't know, maybe that's a libertarian in me coming out or something else, but there's got to be some government accountability, and there's got to be, yeah, anyway.
Go circle back to Councilmember Jacob where this started and then response to the concerns.
Yeah, I actually didn't get my question in yet, but,
Sorry about that.
so you mentioned, just for clarification, you mentioned that if we say this is cool by a resolution, the hotels decide whether or not to participate, right? Did I hear that right?
Not exactly. So the hotels have signed off on it. You have to have 60% support from the hotels within the region.
Right.
And as long as you have 60% support, it then comes to the council to pass by resolution.
Okay, and then,
And then it applies to all.
the benefits of it are, it's a regional marketing advertising thing, right? Some of the things mentioned in the staff report, USANA, Maverick Center, blah, 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 events, the Oval, USA Softball Nationals, whatever, trying to get more events to come to our region of Salt Lake County. So the West region participates, the West region benefits. I guess I'm like the others. I'm like, what does the city have to do with it? I mean, it's hotels assessing a fee to promote hotels. I'm confused. What does the city, state, county, what does government have to do with this?
These are all fair questions. So to answer that question directly, sports tourism specifically is big business. We've got national organizations, National Horseshoe Association, for instance. Sounds silly, but there is such a thing. And in order to have their national championship here, which used to be in Utah, they put out requests for proposals, and you have to pay a fee, a hefty fee. I don't remember what it was. We looked at this a while back, and it was significant. I want to say over $100,000 to apply. And you put together a package to say, here are the hotels we have in the area, and here's where the venue would be, and here's the type of support we would offer. And we would love to have you come to West Jordan, if that's something that we were going to pursue. Now, we haven't, mind you, but those types of events drive economic activity. When you have thousands of people coming in to your community for events, they stay in your hotels for a certain average of days, they eat at your restaurants, they go to your gas stations, etc. And it's that economic activity. Now, there's always a calculation there. We would never do that if it was something that we did the analysis on and we said this is a net loss. At the end of the day, our reason, or rather your reason for supporting this, should not be to benefit the hotel industry. Your reason for doing this, if you choose to do so, should simply be because you see this as an opportunity to offer economic benefit to West Jordan and its residents. And I think that we could certainly make that argument. To give you some of the specifics on the mechanisms of how this is managed, that's something I'd leave to Sports Salt Lake, and we do have some subject matter experts here if you'd like to hear from them.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to hear, who decides how the money's spent? What benefit could we expect with our 3 hotels versus a West Valley or a South Jordan that may have more hotels? I don't have a problem with throwing the word tax or the assessment or the fee or whatever we want to call it out there, because it's not West Jordan residents that are paying it, it's visitors to the city ultimately who are it's part of the hotel experience. Everybody knows that when you buy a hotel room or you rent a hotel room that, yeah, it says it's $145 a night, but in reality it's $210 a night once you add up all the whatevers. And this is just another whatever that just gets added on to the bottom. And on a $200 room, it's $4. I don't think it's going to be a make or break. Oh, I'm not going to stay at your hotel anymore because it's $4 more, kind of a thing. So that part doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that it's called a tax and not a tax or whatever. There's just so many questions that I don't know. I really don't see what the city has to do with it, basically.
You did touch on a very salient point, Councilmember Jacob. The fact is, we do have 3 hotels, and the majority of the hotels, frankly, are in West Valley. I think, Taylorsville is also in the district, and I don't believe they have any hotels, but they can still elect to participate. And the thought is there's a potential benefit to West Jordan. For instance, the Oval. Well, we have the 3 closest hotels to the Oval, and so that event that's held someplace else is a potential benefit to us. The revenues that are generated from West Valley Hotels, who has the vast majority of them, for instance, those all go into the pool, which we potentially access. Again, I can't say exactly what happens with those funds over the long term, but there is potential benefit to us, regardless of whether or not the venue is outside of our city boundaries or not.
So let me ask you this question. The Kearns Oval, fastest ice on earth. They still hold ISF championships and events there all the time. What do we need money for to promote the fastest ice on earth? It's already there. The International Skating Federation knows that that's part of their rotation because it's a great ice skating event. And then the second question would be, with all the international events they've had out there, what impact has it had on our hotels now? Do we have any idea?
Councilmember Green, my intent's really to go over the mechanics of kind of nuts and bolts of how this works. I can't speak to the venues or the types of events we would
You can
pursue.
see where I'm going with that.
Certainly.
Is that, Bear Hollow, Kearns, there's a couple of these places that are built in because we put the legacy fund together. Those venues are going to get events whether we spend money or not. You know what I mean? And so, it just ties as much into my concern, and I can, I'll get back on point with the discussion.
No, I'll turn it over to Clay to maybe answer some of those more technical questions for you all. Clay?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address. Those are great questions.
Can you give us your full name?
Yeah, I'm
and
sorry.
who
Clay
you're
Partain.
associated with?
Yes, ma'am. Clay Partain, Executive Director of Sports Salt Lake. We're a sports division underneath of Visit Salt Lake, so we promote sports tourism. We work with venues all over the county. We work with the Oval quite a bit. So the Oval, you're right, the Oval does host speed skating events, and they can do that naturally. There's only 2 indoor long track speed skating venues in North America, and they're one of them. The Oval's 300,000 square feet of indoor space, and actually when you take away the speed skating events, which really they're not all that many of them, there's 5 or 6 a year. You take away those, and you've got a huge amount of indoor space that largely goes unused when it comes to tournaments and events. It's mostly turns into a local place where people go on walks around the long track, or a local hockey club goes and skates out on the ice. There's a lot of opportunity that we could market the Oval to bring in a lot of different kinds of events. One example we looked at last year was a jump roping national championship. So the Oval melts that long track ice in the summertime, and it's all concrete in there. And it's usable concrete. We can do all kinds of sports in there. We were going to do this gymnastics championship. We've looked at CrossFit type championships. We've even looked at setting up volleyball courts around where the ice goes. There's all sorts of things we can do in that building. Now that's just one example of one venue that's underutilized in terms of financial packages that we need to be able to put together to be able to bring those events in. And it's a highly competitive space nationally. We're competing against other cities in the country for these types of events. The Jump Rope National Championships, they put their RFP out to the whole country, and we all have to bid on it and just cross our fingers that we've got the right package that they want. So we actually lost that event. We didn't get it, and it did come down to finances. So there's lots of things like that. Did that answer that question, or are there any other questions I can help with?
I still am interested in, why couldn't the hotel as an association just put another fee on my bill? I mean, I know that hotels
let
can do
Tyson-
that because I get a dollar fee
Correct.
each
Yeah, I'll
time
let
I
Tyson.
stay in a room.
Yes, I'm happy to address that. I'm Tyson Libbert. I'm the Vice President of Sales at Visit Salt Lake. So per the legislation that passed, one of the requirements was that the municipalities had to pass a resolution. So it's per the statute.
But that isn't my question. Why can't you do this without government? That's my question. Why do you need government to do this? Why can't you just get together as a hotel association and decide that you're all going to do this and put the money together?
So I'm not sure the legality of that. I don't believe that's actually possible, but we can find that out.
I don't know why it wouldn't be possible.
In order
but-
to get to this point, we had to go through the legislature and they had to approve it. The current funding mechanism is through transient room tax, which is added to the bill and then passed through to various organizations, including Visit Salt Lake. So that's how we receive our funds. This type of assessment, and I guess the reason why we call it there's a distinction there, is that Visit Salt Lake receives those funds per the contract with Salt Lake County, and we spend those funds in ways to help promote tourism and economic impact throughout the county. These particular funds we would not have say over. It's an assessment that the hotels would be in charge of, and a committee of hoteliers would decide how they're spent. Now, in terms of representation, each district will have a committee of hotel representatives voted on by the hotel community for who's going to serve there. So there is a mechanism by which you'd have representation. We, of course, would work with each of the committees, but they would dictate how the money is spent. And as per what Clay was talking about, promoting different events and trying to make things easier and make Salt Lake a viable option is one of those things. There is some marketing pieces and some marketing that would be the CTA wide. So there's three distinct areas, but we could combine in places where it makes sense to do so.
So you guys are Visit Salt Lake?
Yes.
And the Salt Lake Sports
Yes.
Association?
Yeah.
Are your organizations, and I should know this, I should sit here if I don't know this, and yet I'm sitting here and I don't know
It's
this.
okay. Yeah.
Are your organizations quasi-governmental organizations? Are they divisions of the Tourism Bureau, or are they
Yeah.
something else?
We're a 501c6, so a nonprofit. So we're a private organization. We are not beholden to the public. We're a private organization.
Okay, but you are largely funded with public
Correct.
money.
Correct.
It's fascinating. We have one of those here in our city, and we don't get along very well.
Oh, well,
So kind of going along with that question, I understand that you would be administering the program. Would there be funds that you guys would be receiving from this in exchange for administering the program?
so there's administrative costs that would be spent to the county to collect, and then any other administrative pieces to this, there would be part of the assessment would go towards that. So if you had to have staffing that would put together programs or run those, they would be separate from Visit Salt Lake. So funds would be kept separate. It'd be completely different budgets. The CTAA, once again, we wouldn't have say over how it's spent. It all has to be approved by the hotels themselves.
But are those administrative funds, so they're not going back to you, they'd be going to a different entity? Would that be a governmental entity that would be responsible for that? If so, where would that reside? Would it be
Yeah.
with Salt Lake County or would it be elsewhere?
So it's possible that administrative fees could go to staff that we would hire. So we're the third party administrator of the assessment fund. So, for example, if the West Region decided that they wanted to spend some money to go after the jump roping competition, they would speak with Clay, and then he would execute that. In most cases, we already have infrastructure to be able to handle that request, but there may be some requests or things that might be outside of what we currently do, or would require further staffing. And so in that case, we would have to hire somebody, and so those funds could go towards something like that.
Any further questions?
So just a thought. This is kind of like I just found out 501c6 is like a chamber of commerce.
Yeah.
So it's very much you're a chamber of commerce with a fancy name, with a specific purpose.
Right.
Which is
right.
which is nice. Most chambers of commerce don't have that specific purpose, which is another topic for discussion. So we contribute to a chamber of commerce as a city. We buy a membership every year to have a say in that. I keep going back and forth with this just because it's not a tax on our residents. We're not imposing an additional burden on anybody here. It's a tax by the tourists, for the tourists, of the tourists. And that makes sense a little bit, but I don't know. I'm struggling to see what the city's role and why the legislature would say, oh, but the city has to okay this. Why? I just don't see it. I mean, I get that we can tangentially, secondhand benefit from some things, but I'm not seeing the nexus.
Right, why that might be the case.
You know what I mean?
It's hard to speak to that, so I'm not sure I'll be able to answer that completely. I will say that there are over 200 of these in place throughout the country. My guess is some of that's just modeled off of what's happened in other places. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Chair, I don't know if a straw poll is necessary, if you'd like to give any feedback or instruction on how you'd like me to proceed from here.
So one of the other things that was discussed earlier is the timeliness of the matter. If this is something that we want to participate in, there has to be a resolution of support in May, correct?
Correct.
Is there a desire from the council to pursue this further, given the time frame?
I would go forward with it, at least to not count ourselves out until we can keep talking about it and keep talking through it. I wouldn't want to kill it before it's all grown up and we see what it is.
Yeah, I'm only seeing one in favor of further dialogue at this point. Does that give you what you need?
Yes, thank you.
All right. That was the only item that we had for the conversation for this meeting.
I'm going to move to adjourn the committee of the whole and move to the various agency meetings with the break to change technology over.
Do we need to name the redevelopment agency meeting? Is that the one that's?
I've set this up to be alphabetical, so Fairway Estates, Municipal Building, and RDA.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Green, second by Councilmember Worthen. All in favor?
I'm
or
Whitelock.
Whitelock. I know names. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we stand adjourned. We'll watch for Mr. Anderson to give us a heads up when we're ready to convene the next